Good afternoon, everyone. We are pleased to have you join us today for our fireside chat with Learner-Centered Collaborative and Digital Promises League of Innovative Schools. I am Dwayne McClary, your host. The League of Innovative Schools is Digital Promises' flagship initiative, and over the past 10 years have grown into a robust and dynamic network of 125 public school districts in 34 states, representing over 3.8 million students. League members are committed to working together to improve student outcomes and solve challenges facing our K-12 schools through innovative strategies, learning technology, and research. The League of Innovative School works to validate, champion, and scale innovative learning opportunities to advance equity and excellence for all learners. Learner-Centered Collaborative is an educator-run nonprofit that partners with educators, schools, districts, and states to define whole learning outcomes, design meaningful learning experience, and create and enable conditions for successfully realizing inclusive and equitable learning-centered models of education. Before we begin, I want to review a few of our housekeeping protocols. Very quickly, if you haven't done so already, please let us know by sharing your name, location, and organization in the chat. Please use the chat as a feature to respond to anything that resonates with you and to discuss and to share your experience or relevant resources. Also, at the end of the panel, we will have a Q&A where we will be taking your questions, you, our audience, to submit for the panel to answer. So there is a Q&A option at the bottom of your screen. Please submit your questions using the Q&A feature in the lower right corner of your screen to submit your questions to the panel. I am pleased to introduce our moderator for today, Ms. Kelsey Payne. Kelsey has a decade plus career in education, has been designed by her commitment to creating opportunities for learners to learn and grow in ways that are best for them. Starting out as a dance teacher, then as a literacy specialist and a first grade teacher, and now the VP of Community Engagement at Learner-Centered Collaborative. She is keenly aware of that learners thrive when their education communities come together to share and support each other. Driven by her own whole child approach to learning, Kelsey works to support and connect educators to tackle challenges collaboratively, share best practices, and ultimately ensure all learners have the opportunity to engage in meaningful learner-centered experience. Welcome, Kelsey.
Thank you, Dwayne. Thank you so much for the introduction. I am so excited to get started. I have the pleasure of introducing our panel today. All right, so there's our panelists. I am going to first introduce Jamie Barron. Jamie Barron is the Assistant Superintendent in Menlo Park City School District. As a bilingual Mandarin and English speaker, she has experience leading in diverse districts throughout the Bay Area at both the elementary and middle school levels. In all of her roles, education equity and effective innovative instructional strategies have been at the forefront of her work. More recently, Jamie, in partnership with her district, have developed a comprehensive whole child learning development framework. Welcome, Jamie. Thank you for being here today.
Thanks, Kelsey. Thanks for that introduction. I'm so honored and excited to be here to share our story and our journey to this point in time, and just know that we're amongst mind-like thinkers in this group.
Great. Thank you, Jamie. All right. I would next like to introduce our next panelist. If you want to go to the next slide. Great. Miguel Gonzalez was born and raised in Colorado. He has taught and led school communities in Colorado and internationally. Miguel is the school director at Embark Education, an innovative micro middle school that is embedded in 2 small businesses in North Denver. More recently, Miguel has created an iterative space where educators can build upon their ideas and passions in proximity to others doing the same, with a deep effort to honor them as professionals. Welcome, Miguel.
Thanks, Kelsey. Super excited to be here. And I see the participant number keep climbing, which is amazing to recognize that there's such a powerful group of people who are interested in learner-centered education, and look forward to sharing our experience with everyone.
Great, thank you. And last but certainly not least, we have Stephanie Strader here today. She is a mom, wife, and learner, the proud principal of Pioneer Elementary, a new multi-age project-based learning STEAM school in Gig Harbor, Washington. First of its kind in the Peninsula School District, Stephanie is leading the vision of learner-centered exploration for students and staff and prioritizing competency-based learning and collaboration. Thank you for being here, Stephanie.
Hi, thanks for having me, Kelsey. I'm honored to be here, as Jamie and Miguel shared. It's just an honor to see so many like-minded thinking partners in this group, and I'm excited to share our journey with all of you and also learn and make some connections along the way.
Great. Well, before we dive in, I did just want to take a moment to acknowledge all of you, our participants. Right now in education is an extremely challenging and stressful time. And like Miguel said, as I watch that participant number rise and rise, it is a reminder to me the commitment that educators have to their students and their families. So not that I needed another reason to think that educators are superheroes, maybe superhuman, but thank you for creating the time and the space to be here today. And my hope is that this next hour can serve as something that fills your cup, inspires you, and serves as maybe a bit of a break on this lovely Tuesday. So really allow yourself to enjoy it and engage. Let's get started. Great. So my first question to the panelists is to allow the participants to get to know you a bit better. And the question is, how did you get here? And here could be this panel today, here could be the school and the work that you're doing now. But if you could briefly describe your journey to this work, I'm going to kick it off with Miguel.
Thanks, Kelsey. Oftentimes when I think about how I got here, like and I've engaged with this question with a handful of people, and a lot of people talk about like their winding path in education and how they ended up here. And certainly mine's winding, but it really did, as I like reflect on it, like I've always been committed to youth. And I actually started my education journey like back in high school, right? I worked in the YMCA before and after school program. And like, I didn't have to go to work before school. I chose to, and I chose to do that because I like literally loved working with youth. And what I knew from early on is that that's what I wanted to do. And what brought me into like more formal education in the K-12 space wasn't necessarily being a middle school English teacher, which I was for a number of years. I fell in love with with English. But I actually, like my first love is working with youth. And that has been present throughout my entire career. So I was a middle school English teacher for a number of years. As you shared in the introduction, I also worked internationally at a school. And as I came back into the United States, I was fortunate to be able to more seriously grapple with what I valued in education and really focusing in on how I can best support youth. And fortunately, I was super fortunate enough to meet our executive director of the nonprofit that we partnered with, Great Work Inc. And as he was, had the idea of starting a micro middle school embedded in 2 small businesses, and that just lit a complete fire underneath me. And the next thing I knew, I was like stepping off the ledge into the unknown, of really pulling together all the lessons that I'd learned across my life, across other people's lives, listening to them, listening to the community, and really building a school from the ground up in a learner-centered model.
Thank you, Miguel. I am going to pass it to Stephanie.
Miguel, I have some of those similar connections. I too have built a school from the ground up, so it'll be fun to connect today and just share in our experiences together. How I got here it's an interesting, I don't even know most days. I wake up and I still think it's a little bit of a dream. I was going to be in education since I was a child. There was no other professional choice. You know, I was going to be a kindergarten teacher for 50 years. And then that didn't work out. I actually found that my niche was with 4th and 5th graders. There's a level of sarcasm to my personality that is better understood in the older grades than maybe 5-year-olds. And so became a teacher for a number of years and knew that I wanted to get my master's in administration for someday, maybe potentially, if I ever get out of the classroom. But what I learned is that first and foremost, I see myself as a learner and a passionate advocate for public school education. And so I kind of just unnaturally, unexpectedly went through this trajectory of dean to assistant principal to principal. And I was very happy and content at my previous school, wonderful people, wonderful families, wonderful students. And all of a sudden we passed a bond in our school community that we hadn't done in, well, since I was in elementary school myself, 25, 30 years ago. And we had a superintendent at the time that was a big dreamer. And all of a sudden we were going to have a brand new school and it was going to be a magnet school. And at the time we were doing a lot of dreaming in our district about what could education be. And so I was just totally caught up in that vision of, you know, if I don't get this opportunity, how can it start at the school I'm at? And then all of a sudden it became, let's just apply for the job. And so here we are, we're in our first, we really haven't even finished our first year within our school building. So we're still a very, very brand new school, just trying to figure it out. But I've been on this journey for about 4 years now, planning and preparing and dreaming about what learning could be. And, you know, we're not there yet, but what we're doing for kids in this middle of this pandemic is pretty remarkable. And I'm just excited to share some of that with you all today.
Great. Thank you, Stephanie. I'm going to pass the mic over to you, Jamie.
Thanks, Kelsey. So my past experience has been, you know, focusing on districts that are what we call Title I school districts, where back in the day, the schools were identified as program improvement. And so a lot of the work that I had previously done was around supporting students and closing the achievement gap, and you know, very compliance oriented. State would come down with, you know, requirements, and you need to increase by so many percentages and et cetera. And everybody had to be somewhat on the same pacing guide and lesson plans. And, you know, that was, I mean, I knew from day one that was really stifling in terms of learning and creativity. And that we weren't really tapping into the potential of student learning. And so just in my journey, in my educational journey, I've been really trying to find, you know, my home, a place where I can be with educators that are like-minded. And arriving here in Menlo Park City School District about 5 years ago, I found my tribe. And in our particular district, this work is messy. It's not easy. A lot of it is trying to shift mindset in how we interact with education, how we work with students, teachers, and parents. And it all started off with pretty much a tagline that our superintendent uses: dream it, own it, rock it. And that put us in a position 6 years ago where we redefined our strategic directions and came up with a lot of lofty goals. And we had about 48 strategic directions, if you can believe it. And by 3 years in, it was a 6-year plan. And by 3 years in, we sort of revisited where we've been and where we are presently and where we need to go. And through this whole experience, what I've learned is that the most important is to involve people, hear what people have to say, understand where they're coming from, because it impacts everybody, not just the district office. And it, you know, and every opportunity that you speak to somebody is an opportunity to change their mindset. And so with that in mind, we just felt that this was our North Star. It was so important. And also really to get our principals on board. And so defining what learner-centered looks like, and how do we help our site leaders problem solve and and roll this out at the school sites and really like, there's reality versus, like a vision or hopes and wants. And so we need to bring and bridge that together so that we can make this happen.
Thank you so much, Jamie. All right, let's dive into learner-centered. So often when we hear learner-centered, we start with thinking about outcomes and what we want for our students. And that requires often a courageous conversation about assessment and measuring what matters in our communities. So this one, I feel like we can popcorn out a bit and build off of one another, but I would love to talk about what does assessment and outcomes look like in your setting and how'd you get there?
I'm happy to go first. So we're still on a journey with assessment. And I would say when we launched last year in our opening year, it was the first thing that we started that I would say I wasn't anticipating. We opened obviously in a pandemic, the whole world was remote. We didn't have a finished facility. So it was chaos on top of everything. And then the one piece that everyone kept kind of struggling with is what does this look like for our students? How do we help get to this idea of learner-centered? And it forced us to really go back to some of the core ideas that we've established as a learning community and our core, we call them our core competencies for our students, which are those learner outcomes that we talked about. And at the end of their time at Pioneer Elementary, as they transition out of elementary school, they transition to middle school, what do we want our students to be able to do? Not necessarily know, but what do we want them to, what are those soft skills, those 21st century skills, which we find of the greatest value. And so we developed a document that really has a progression of kind of proficiencies at each grade level. We're a multi-age school, so we have it K1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we're looking at things like, are they global citizens? Are they empowered learners? Are they collaborators? Are they communicators? Are they problem solvers? And so we're using this language in our classroom, and we're showing that we value that just as much as we value their math test score, or we value their DIBELS test score. And so it's definitely a work in progress. Right now, it's still very adult heavy in terms of its language and terminology, but to see the students use those in reflection of their projects that they're working on. Recently, I had a fourth and fifth grade teacher report to me that she was having a conference with a student, and they said, I was a problem solver today because, and I can't remember the particular unit, but it was, I did not, it was their circuit unit. I did not know why my circuit would not connect, but I was able to go back to this resource and I was able to figure it out and I got my circuit to work. And so it's really powerful that we're able to capitalize on some of these moments and show our students that we value these components, not just your reading scores, not just your writing scores, and not just your math scores. So that's one area that we are looking at learner-centered assessment differently.
Yeah, and Stephanie, I saw a great question come in from Tom. And so while I have you, would you define what learner-centered means to you?
Yeah, so for us, learner-centered is about really putting the learner in the driving seat. And so when we're thinking about our units, when we're thinking about instruction, when we're thinking about the experiences that students have in the classroom, it's really how do we structure our time and our day to put choice and voice in the hands of students. And so it's not just what they learn, but it's how they learn it as well. And in our dreaming stages, we thought everything about creativity with our master schedule. How does our reporting look different, and all of those things, trying to have that lens of the student. But also as a leader of the school, I'm looking at learner-centered in the avenue of my staff as well, right? How do we have the professional development opportunities so that it is driven by their passions, by their interests, by the areas that they see themselves wanting to grow in as well. That's kind of the work that we're trying to work through here at Pioneer.
Yeah, Miguel or Jamie, if you want to start, would you first define learner-centered for you and then maybe answer the assessment piece?
Yeah, I can go ahead and go next in a lot of ways, because Stephanie, our journeys are super similar, but I'm excited to share like the differing pieces. But I'll first start with learner-centered. So as we started the work with Embark, we really started to, again, similar, like put the learner at the center, but what does that mean? And for us, it really meant about like giving them agency, having authentic and contextualized learning. Like our school is embedded into small businesses, a coffee shop and a bike shop. And so having their learning be able to like really come to life, where they're never left asked, why am I learning this, is super central to our learner-centered experience. And then being able to have, like, again, being in the shops too, it's like having that, like, the open walled concept where they're able to like authentically interact with community. And, we're really challenging the concept of school versus learning. And we, while we are a school, we definitely probably self-identify as a learning environment more than a school. And so, like, as we started to grapple with those things, we knew those things ourselves, and over our journey to, there's a lot of other great models out there, right? So Learner-Centered Collaborative has an incredible model of learner-centeredness. Education Reimagined has a model of learner-centeredness. Transcend has a model of learner-centeredness, and they're all really overlap. Like, they're all pretty close to each other. And so, while, oftentimes we find ourselves using a lot of Education Reimagined stuff, like, they're all so valuable, and all of them have been like guiding North Stars to help us uncover it. And so the beautiful part for me in this is that while there was a lot to build from scratch, there's incredible, brilliant people who are already out there like paving the way for us to do this work. And so super inspired by that, and super proud to bring it to life. To get to the assessment question, I think what sets us apart is one of the first things that we did at Embark was we actually built our learner profile first, right? Our learner profile is like the biggest, most aspirational things that we could ask of our students. So there are things like aware, resilient, curious, revolutionary. And I challenged our educators to teach to those instead of teaching to the standards. And as we engaged with that, actually, we both knew and really uncovered like that was an impossible task. I've yet to see an educator be able to teach a lesson that really teaches revolutionariness, right? Like, you can't quite sink your teeth into that. Although there's like these underlying skills that do make that happen. And so we spent a whole year like really challenging ourselves to teach to the impossible, to really bring that to life for our learners. And what that did for us is it moved us on the continuum away of what's possible and where our focus is. And while the standards are still like super important, what it did is it helped us backtrack into our competencies, right? Our competencies are agency, communication, collaboration, quantitative reasoning, critical thinking, and reflection. And in combinations of each of those, right, you can engage in quantitative reasoning and reflection, and that helps you be curious. That helps you be revolutionary. And so we took a pretty unique path to settle into how we're engaging with assessments and how we're engaging with our learning model, right? And so the way we also do with our competencies is we teach our competencies, we don't teach our contents, right? So we teach collaboration, and the vehicle in which we do that is math and English, science and humanities. So we teach those first and foremost, and then we use our contents as the vehicles.
Miguel, that's going to be hard to follow. That was so inspirational. I'm like taking notes frantically hearing you. So we as a school district really took time to think about learner-centered. This is one of the elements in our whole child framework. And in order to really have this sort of transcend and be a part of our, what we do, walk the walk, talk the talk, talk the talk, walk the walk. We had our leadership team really sit down and grapple with this idea of learner-centered, and what does that mean? And what does that mean to the adults in the room? What does that mean in terms of actions and the way it's being played out in the classrooms? And what does it mean in terms of intervention and support for our students to be able to reach particular goals? And so our definition of learner-centered is educators honor each learner's interests, strengths, and in order to shape the environment and experiences, learners are active participants in their learning as they gradually take ownership. And so through this definition, some of the strategies that we're really trying to implement is creating a learner profile so that everybody understands the strength of a child, where the challenges are, and being able to set goals, and creating, giving space for passion projects. And I know that we have, the core content areas that we need to address, but through that, like Miguel's environment, where they're actually, teaching through the competencies, but at the same time addressing standards-based state standards. And just, giving lots of voice and choice. Several of our schools have taken the whole project-based learning approach. We have one school that is fully trained through the Bucks Institute in terms of project-based. I mean, that just speaks to learner-centered. And so, and coming back to assessments, we really believe in trying to support kids in developing this passion for learning and not so much compliance in terms of like, what did I get? And what grades did I get? And so we have teachers that have come together and really have thought through our students and what they need in terms of meeting our whole child framework, and have developed benchmarks that provide them information along the way to assess students based on their learner profiles and be able to make adjustments to their teaching. And it really is all about supporting the students and their learning and their journeys. And if students, don't do well on an assessment, we give them opportunities to retake. And so we are right now in the midst of writing a grading policy that's going to really reflect our whole child learning framework and really have a learner-centered focus on it. And so that's kind of where we're at this point, but back to you, Kelsey.
Yeah, thank you all for sharing. I'd love to learn a little bit more about the impact of, I'm hearing that you are setting this North Star of what these outcomes should be that are both meaningful to your community, but also, your community, your staff, and then also your students. If you have an example, something tangible we could hold on to, maybe an example of what impact this has had on your students, I'd love to hear an example. Whoever would like to share first. Jamie, you're still unmuted, so I might pass it to you first.
I'll go ahead and jump in. So as we continue to focus on learner-centered and looking at ways to really give students voice and choice, and we know that in the last 2 to 3 years, our nation has been experience a lot of stress and challenges. And as a learning community, we felt that it was important for our students to be able to also understand some of the challenges in a way that kids can manage and handle the information. And so really focusing on inclusive learning, equity, anti-racism, that has sparked so much interest and excitement amongst our students. And finding that kids are excited about it and wanting to do good in our world. And so we had brought this sort of overarching topic to our schools. And one of our elementary schools, one of the teachers actually really talked about race and talked about skin color and impacts and all that. And then through that, the kids were able to really think about their environments and how different students from different countries might feel. And one of the kids totally innovated this idea about, well, I go something so simple, but yet so powerful, where the student was thinking that, we go to the nurse's office all the time, but we always have one color Band-Aid. And that's not reflective of who we are as a school community. And so through that project, we've got all sorts of different color Band-Aids within our school district, whereas kids, when they go to the office, they can actually pick a different colored Band-Aid that matches who they are, and so that they feel good about their identity and race. So that's just one I guess, a little more into the weeds example.
Kelsey, if I can add a little bit there too. Another component of what we're doing to support student choice and voice and kind of work on that, changing the story of assessment at Pioneer, is doing student-led conferences and student portfolios. And so I feel very lucky and privileged. I have 2 daughters myself, and they get to attend Pioneer. So I get this perspective and this lens of leader and learner, and also mom, right? And hearing it from your kids. And this last fall, my 2nd grader was leading her father and I through her student-led portfolio. And what I really love about the way the structure of the portfolio is working right now is it's students get to choose what components they put in their portfolio that reflect whatever it is that they're working on at that time. So if the standard at that time was just basic additions, she got to select the assignments that really reflected for her what it was that she was meeting that standard. And then when it came to our learner competencies of problem solver, collaborator, communication, again, she got to bring in the pieces that really showed how she was doing that, whether it was an actual artifact or a conversation. They do design challenges, and in a fairy tale unit, they had to design, they had to design a seat for 3 little bears, Goldilocks. And so she brought out this design, right? And my husband does not look amused because he doesn't quite understand yet what we're going for this. And she's able to talk about the design process and her reiteration stages, the feedback she got from her peers and her colleagues, and how all of those attributes related to how she was a communicator, how she was a collaborator, how she was a problem solver. And so we're really trying to think outside the box, and how are we getting our students to see that they are these things, that they're exhibiting these things daily, and then our community to also see what this looks like in practice as well.
Thank you both. Yeah, I'll give a quick example. So again, Embark is embedded in 2 small businesses, and one of the things we're striving to do is have all of the learning be relevant and contextualized and truly authentic. And so one of the experiences that really resonates for us is, we had our students, they will design a seasonal drink menu for our coffee shop, where it's not just designing the seasonal drink menu, but the drinks are like actually sold in our coffee shop. And so they work directly with our enterprise team, so full career baristas, to take, the concept of like, okay, we'd like you to make a seasonal drink menu. And that is their prompting piece. And then they sink in and they have the voice and choice of exploring that, right? So, they start with the season coming up, and, as they went into last year, or this passed in the winter, right? So as the students were working and designing these drinks, they actually looked at each other and recognized, like, this isn't just a seasonal drink menu, this is a globally inspired menu. And so collaboratively, the students shifted that entire project, right? That wasn't teacher driven. That was a decision that they were making about what they recognized amongst each other and where their learning was taking them. And in support with the educator, they were going out into the community. They were visiting like our local spice shop, savory spice shop, to figure out how do you have like cardamom be forward on the tongue when they drink it, right? That totally changes how you're thinking about science, and what's going on behind it is truly deeply authentic in their experience. And so bringing those things forward, and then ultimately it's not about every student's group being on the seasonal drink menu, because in fact some of them are not like up to full coffee shop standards. And it wasn't about that. What ended up becoming about was not like this student's drink got selected or this group's drink got selected. It's that they made a menu together. And so together, they were all successful because they were cheering each other on as much as they were cheering themselves on in their own learning. And so like the pieces where they were pushing each other and they were steering their learning about what flavor profiles they wanted to have, what questions they needed to do. And then as they were actually going out into the community and doing tests, like flavor tests, and having like feedback directly from the community themselves, is super impactful and powerful work. And so like that's definitely an example. And last year's seasonal drink went on to become our #1 seasonal drink of all time in our coffee shop. And it was designed by an 11-year-old. And so it is really powerful when you like radically trust the adolescents to take charge into things that like, it's a little scary, right? It's a little scary. If it's not like a little bit nerve-wracking for you as an adult, then what are you really doing, right? What risks are you willing to put out there to help elevate their experience and their voice? And at Embark, we're trying to live into that every day.
Thank you so much for sharing those examples. For me, I always like something to hold on to remind me 2 weeks from now, 3 weeks from now, as I'm implementing change, and holding on to that story about the coffee will motivate me for weeks and maybe months to come. So thank you everyone for sharing those examples. This work is also super challenging, right? We are getting to these aha moments and these bright spots, but some of this work is really challenging. And I thought that we could take some time to share a challenge. I saw some questions come up around, what roadblocks are in your way? What challenges have come up? I think, maybe just this year with the pandemic, how has it affected your school and staffing? So I'm going to open it up to a challenge, and how are you working to overcome it? I think I'm going to kick it to you first, Stephanie.
That sounds good. Thanks, Kelsey. I think it's pretty easy to, especially right now in a pandemic, right, to go through all of the things that are a challenge, and just the pandemic in general is a challenge. But I've been trying to challenge myself that we're not going to talk about the pandemic being a challenge anymore. We need to talk about what we're going to do regardless for kids. And so when I think about challenges as we're still starting, I mean, we are very much a new school community. I think the one challenge that we're having right now is we did get to start from the ground up. And so that does mean we kind of drew in a certain personality and skill set of an educator, right? Big dreamers, and they're go-getters, and they want, this is what I want, I'm going to get it tomorrow, right? And so we have set ourselves off some really lofty goals, and high goals are really, really good, and they're very important. But I've also learned we have to go slow if we're going to go fast. And so narrowing it back, breaking down, those big vision pieces to what is attainable right now, what makes sense right now, what can we do right now? And so that's one step we're at right now. How many times can I say that? To really figure out what are those tangible steps that we're going to take to get us on our continuum, because we cannot do it all well at the same time. And so that's one challenge that we're taking. And it also allows us to then have those difficult conversations to change that mindset, right? If we're focusing on this component of our school's culture, of our school's climate, of our community, then we can say, okay, this is our emphasis. This is where we're going to put our professional learning. This is where we're going to put our time together. And then we can have deeper dives into conversations about, do we really have a common understanding of what that means, what that looks like, and then how do we see it in practice? Thanks.
I'll go ahead and jump in. Thanks, Stephanie. I would say that our challenges were, in terms of this work around learner-centered, were addressed pre-pandemic, in that we brought the community together and really defined what this means for us. And so now that we have our framework, we are able to make adjustments as needed, depending on our current environment, because we have the framework to fall back on. And so oftentimes my superintendent will call it, refer to it as a dial. And so there are times where things are a little more stressful, then we dial down or we dial up. But everything is centered around the framework, and we have common language, and we have common vision, and we have common expectations. And so the flexibility comes around timeline and approach to delivery. And so I think our staff understands that this is a marathon and not a sprint. And so during the marathon, you're going to encounter times of challenges. And so you make adjustments while you're on this run. And when things feel a little more manageable, then you dialed back up. And so I'd like to say that this framework has really helped us kind of carry us through this pandemic, because I don't know that without this framework, we would have been as cohesive in terms of just our approach. And so, and as a school district, we actually, went into school closure when COVID first hit in March of 2020. But the expectation is that we're going to open back up. And so we've actually been open all last year with kids in hybrid learning. And so that was just where we landed. And I think what really helped us was having the framework.
Thanks, Jamie. I think that there's a lot of challenges, right? So each of our environments is distinctly different and unique, and we're from different places across the United States too. And for me, one of the challenges is just within our context and being a school that's really embedded in businesses was like I wasn't able to do that through the public system. It's a little bit too radical for where the Denver public education scene is right now. And so I needed to think outside of the box, and that is an absolute challenge. And recognizing that, like, being a school that is like the whole school environment, it's not a school, it's a learning environment in a business, two businesses, and not, necessarily adhering to the same pieces of, what people traditionally see as school and the four walls that box you in, and seeing being it within the community. That's a challenge in my immediate context. But more than that, like on a philosophical level, like one of the challenges that I've seen recently has been like the binary thinking of like you're learner-centered or you're not, right? You either are or you aren't. You either fit into these or you check all the boxes or you don't. Like that's a challenge. That's a challenge in thinking, right? Like we all need to be working together to make these shifts to empower our learners to work into the future. And that feels like a huge challenge for me. And one of the things that I've done with that, and it's been a center point for me, was actually like an article from Jim Rickbaugh, and it had 3 questions that really has like resonated deeply with me. The 3 questions that he poses are: what are you doing that learners could do? What are you doing that learners should do? And then I changed the 3rd one to: what is the environment or context that you need to do in order to enable that? And the most powerful piece of solving that challenge for me and answering those questions is that you can scale that, right? From a district, you can answer that at a district level, all the way down to a single classroom level and down to a single individual student. And it might be one of the most powerful frameworks that I've seen, like 3 questions that just like are simple to go back to and will help you, like have really helped me through the challenge of the binary thinking. Because when you're really asking that question about the students and having them answer about what they could do and what they should do, it's not about you as an adult any longer. And it starts to open up and break down that binary thinking of you're learner-centered or you're not, because it's not about you, it's about them.
Yeah, I am looking at the time. I have been trying to embed many of our questions into our conversation here today. One that is coming up is advice. If you are someone, like Miguel said, let's call it a spectrum of learner-centered, and you are looking for ways to take steps towards being learner-centered or shift practices in your classroom or at your district, what's something that you think people should take away from this conversation, or a piece of advice that maybe has fueled your fire in those challenging moments or as you continue to do this work? I'm going to kick it to Jamie for the first response.
Thanks, Kelsey. Bottom line is this work is messy, and really, everybody has 15 to 20 to 30 years of experience that they're coming to the table with, and everybody has sort of a particular mindset. Somebody in the audience had asked a question about like, what are the challenges? How did we get to the framework? And really, I think you just have to find an entry point and just start. And whether that is addressing the challenges with the book study, what really helped our district is we had a district read with Katie Martin's book. Oh my gosh, I'm totally blanking the innovation. Yes, learner-centered innovation. Hello. You know, sometimes having just starting small with a book study and then starting this conversation and think about what could that look like in our classrooms? And also, what are the challenges that people are facing that's preventing them from actually starting within the classroom? Because we need to honor our teachers and honor our staff members who are in the front line, directly working with our students and understanding some of the barriers that they might have from stopping them from creating this kind of a learning environment. And so I would say it's messy work.
Jamie, thank you so much for sharing. I want to maximize our time. Miguel, would you mind sharing a bit of, you know, challenges and how you've overcome them? I mean, advice. I'm a little disoriented from getting back.
Yeah, that was wild. I mean, such is the reality of what we're all going through. So
Yeah.
no worries. Yeah, I mean, Jamie's advice of just starting definitely feels like the most pertinent thing to me, right? Is like, just get in there. And I think the other piece for me is like, find those elements of success, right? Like, and hold those tight and hold those close to the heart. Because it is about creating a new system. It's not about trying to change the system any longer, right? Like, the education system is broken. It's not about trying to like make this fit into what was. It's about creating a new and recognizing that this is going to feel, sound, taste, smell like different than anything that we've ever done, and recognizing for what it is versus assuming that it needs to feel the same as before.
I would echo 100% what Jamie and Miguel shared. And then along the way, just find your people. In addition to the vision and what you want to accomplish as we're creating new. And I think, Miguel, you said that very, very well. We're not trying to change something. We're trying to do something new. Find your people that you connect with on that, because it's so hard and it is so easy to say, this is too much, this is too hard. But if you orient to what it is that you believe and what you hope to get out of it for kids, how they can take ownership. Those questions you ask, Miguel, are some of my favorite. What can they do? What should they do? And how do I make sure that I enable the conditions so that they can do it? We find ways to persevere through it. And little by little, that change starts to happen. The mind shifts, or the mindsets shift. And we start to see some incredible things that we know learner-centered environments can be.
Well, great. I know that we just came back together, but unfortunately we're coming up on our time. I did just want to create space for you all before I close it out. If you have any last thoughts or things you heard from your fellow panelists that you'd like us to hear, I'd love to just open it up for a minute. Or maybe something you're taking away from this.
I mean, for me, I'm just like, I mean, I'm taking away like inspiration, right? Like, I am outside of the traditional system. And so like hearing this in like different contexts is like, God, that's what it's about, right? Where it's like, it is about seeing it working in different spaces and in different places for different learners. And I am just super inspired by that. And that's going to keep me going. Like, I'm super excited about that. And the last piece that I'll say is like, the concept that we really, wrestle with is leaning into radical trust. I shared it early on in our, in the conversation, kind of dropped that little piece, but like, what does it look like as a leader when you radically trust students? What does it look like when you radically trust educators who signed up to do this work, not because they're like super excited to fill out the paperwork, but they're excited, like I was, to work with youth? And what happens when you radically trust them to take the leads, like with their students in collaboration with the community? And when you bring those things together, it again is like a whole different system, and it's a really powerful thing. So again, thank you for being like allowing me to be on this panel and to have my soul fed today. So appreciate it.
I'm feeling grateful for the connection to Jamie and Miguel. I did have a chance to go and visit a few schools down in Menlo Park, Jamie, a couple falls ago. And so that was kind of a precipice of our vision too, of seeing how a school, a district-wide system can start to change this thinking. And I'm super honored and privileged that I work in a community who isn't afraid to ask what's next and what if, and that support, and trying to be a little bit of catalyst, not for change, because what we do is good, but for new, right? Different ways of thinking. And so I feel inspired to know that as of 11:45 today, there were over 381 people signed up for this webinar today, which tells me the interest is there, the passion is there, the excitement is there. And that drives me to keep going, to keep asking the questions, to keep failing forward to design this incredible opportunity for learners, and hopefully along the way, continue to learn and grow and share in that success with others.
Jamie, anything you want to share with us before we close out?
I really liked what I think Stephanie said earlier, is find your people and just start talking. You know, there are so many thought partners out there, and you know, critical friends who can really help give you some ideas and think through some of your opportunities. And so again, like I said, this work is so messy, but you just need to start somewhere. And I'm happy to share with, you know, this group and anyone else if they have the time and would want to hear more about our journey. And I know that I can learn from everyone else. And just being on this panel, I've already learned so much from Stephanie and Miguel, and I'm going to be reaching out to the both of you because, you know, this work doesn't end, and, you know, we just have so much to learn around it.
Well, before I pass it over to Dwayne to close us out, I just want to say thank you to everyone who joined today. I truly believe that this work happens in an ecosystem. So I am so happy to add you all to our community, to this community, and I am so excited to connect with you all again. All right, Dwayne, close us out.
All righty. Thank everyone for being here. I apologize for whatever that glitch was. I don't know what that was. It just seemed like everything just started slowing down and just went off. But hey, that's technology. So thank you once again, Jamie, Stephanie, Miguel. Thank you for your insights. Always great working with you guys. Super excited to have you guys back to talk more. And also Kelsey, thank you for being brave and moderating this panel. And to our corporate partners, Learner Center Collaborative, thank you once again for bringing this idea to us and working with us, as always, to do right by students. All right, we want to remind folks of the next upcoming Fireside Chat. We have 2 more to go. Our next one is January 26th at 10 a.m. Pacific time. This is a Fireside Chat. We heard a little bit about some books that Katie had written, but we're also going to hear from Devin Davuchek. And he will also talk, we're going to look at elevating education and leading the way towards a learner-centered paradigm. So super excited. Please make sure you register. The bit.ly is at the bottom of the screen. And thank you once again. If you have any questions or would like to get in touch with anyone from Learner Center Collaborative or Digital Promise, please feel free to send us an email or go to our website and learn more about the work that we're doing to support students. Thank you once again, and we look forward to seeing you guys on the next one. Have a great day.